Opening day of the New Mexico legislative session always means the State of the State address from the sitting governor. This year, Governor Susana Martinez opened her speech with a focus on crime and public safety.
There are no more excuses for light sentences and automatic bail for violent offenders. And we need laws that are tough in substance, not just in sound bites. Look at our 3 strikes law. Sounds tough, but it was worded so that it didn't mean anything. No one has ever been incarcerated under that law.
The governor also devoted a great deal of attention to her education agenda and criticized opponents of her proposals.
Reading skills are formed early on. As a result, if children are passed along in early grades when they cannot read, the likelihood of them being able to learn in later grades plummets. And people wonder why a large number of students in New Mexico don't graduate. If we accept failure early, if we implicitly tell a child they can't learn, why would we expect otherwise? And why would we allow ourselves to be shocked if these discouraged, frustrated students choose to drop out or turn to crime?
And you can see the governor's full speech on our website, newmexicoinfocus.org. Now, did you watch the speech? What was your reaction to the priorities laid out by the governor this week? Get in touch with us on our website or through social media. New Mexico in Focus is on Facebook and Twitter, of course. Now, our line panelists this week are ready to talk about the governor's priorities for lawmakers this year. I'm joined at the table by independent journalist Rob Nicoleski, also one of our regulars. Antoinette Cedillo-Lopez is back. She's executive director of Enlace Comunitario. Former Lieutenant Governor Diana Dennis is here, and Stephen Spitz, host of New Mexico People, Places, and Ideas on KUNM. Lieutenant Governor, let me start with you. You've seen a lot of these speeches from a lot of different perspectives, meaning from the gallery and then also up close as well. Now, it's interesting. She laid out a lot of things that we have heard before, but I'm interested in what you thought her main thrust was. I'm going to start with crime and punishment here. What was the goal there by focusing so much on that issue when there's other issues could be priorities?
Well, certainly crime and punishment is her strength. She was a DA for 25 years, which she actually referred to in the speech. But the speech as a whole was kind of like watching an old movie. You know, you'd look at it and you think, well, this might be pretty good. And then at the end you say, this really doesn't have a very good ending because we've heard it all before. It was like a replay. And we've heard these speeches about crime. We've heard speeches about third grade retention. We've heard speeches about Real ID. And none of them have really either been enacted or worked for New Mexico. I was surprised actually about the crime, how she didn't link that to New Mexico's overriding issue, which is poverty, and how poverty is linked to everything that's even mentioned in the speech. Crime, education, all the things that, health, behavioral health. There's nothing in there that really isn't linked to the overriding issue of poverty in New Mexico.
That's a good point. We'll come back to that. That's an interesting point. Rob Nicoleski, your initial thoughts and priorities. Did she lay them out effectively and persuasively?
Well, I guess it depends on what side of the political spectrum you're on. You know, Democrats have lambasted it, and sure enough, Michael Sanchez, right after the speech, gave the Democratic response. That was an interesting story in and of itself. I mean, that was a pretty, let's see, what's the word? Pugilistic response.
That would be a good one.
I mean,
that's your sports background.
Yeah, not just going after the governor, but also he went after the media as well. If you saw the video on Channel 4, I mean, that was pretty pugnacious. And then you had the whole pizza socks thing, you know.
That's right. Explain that. A lot of folks don't know what that's about.
Well, Majority Leader Sanchez and a number of other Democrats were wearing these brightly colored socks that looked like that had depictions of slices of pizza on it, of course referring to the governor's infamous pizza party last month. So, I mean, what I came away from listening to that speech was, and also listening to the speech and also listening to the reaction was from the Democrats was, this is going to be fought out, and this is going to be a real battle between the Democrats and the Republicans. I don't know if a whole lot's going to get done in 30 days.
Interesting. Would you pick up on that, Stephen, as well? Did you get the same sense hearing both of those, the governor's speech and the response, folks are laying out some pretty clear lines in the sand, aren't they?
That's right. I mean, I think the governor's already indicated before the session started that she has her eyes on a Republican Senate. She would like to go after the Democrats on that basis. And I think maybe that's why she focuses on crime so much, because an anti-crime agenda works well with independents and Republicans. It gets them out. Now,
or it has traditionally.
It has traditionally worked well, and the same with the driver's license issue, which she highlighted. That has worked. You know, even though maybe a majority of New Mexicans are would like to see undocumented people have a driver's license and are not excited about the anti-crime agenda, it does, you know, if you campaign on that, that seems to work. It has worked for, I mean, that's why we have a Republican House, right? It's worked for. Now, if you're a Republican and you're running for DA and you have an anti-crime agenda, that's a great speech. I think if you're trying to address the problems that New Mexico has, you know, high unemployment, low medium income,
the list could go on.
Childhood poverty, 1/3 of our people in poverty. You know, ignoring that gives an unrealistic feel to the whole speech, especially when you're bright and optimistic and saying all these things. New Mexicans tend to know what's going on in New Mexico. And I think it gave as Senator Sanchez said, gave kind of an unrealistic feel to the whole speech.
Antoinette, Sanchez even used the term parallel universe.
Yeah, I didn't want to go that far.
Right. Well, he did. He did. That's incendiary as heck. I mean, you know,
it's an interesting point, but I actually, when you say that this is a good speech for a district attorney or something like that, I think it might have been a frustrating speech in some ways, in that while when you have these tragedies happen, people tend to want to pass more laws, but when you look at our infrastructure, what we really need is the resources to implement existing laws. So I think that, you know, talking about skipping out on parole should be an elevated crime. What resources are there to take that on and to implement that? And so I just really, if they're struggling now to implement the laws that we have on the books.
That's a fair point, absolutely.
Well, and that, to her point, it's a budget session. And if you look at the bulk of this speech, there really is there's a lot of criticism of the judicial, but her budget does not, in fact, shore up the judicial system so that caseloads can be taken care of, you know, across the judicial
Let me ask you a
system.
question on that regard, and this is for everybody too. As we sit here and tape this, we've still got oil at just about $27 a barrel. Are all these conversations just fundamentally tainted, Lieutenant Governor, about budgets and things with this specter of this low oil price going on right now?
Well, I think what New Mexicans realize that are out there, especially working in the oil and gas communities, is that jobs are being lost day by day, and that this speech did not reflect the realities of the lives of New Mexicans today. And the what ifs, what she didn't address in a bold speech would have been, we have to think about the what if oil continues to stay at $25, $30, $35 a barrel. It's not going back to $100. How do we create jobs without that?
Using this situation as a context for...
And here's my proposal. What about connectivity for communities, you know? What about state-of-the-art technology and how we're going to... She did talk a little bit about the private equity fund, but that's an old idea renewed. It's happened before. They quit doing it during the recession. So now it's back. But who's going to look at New Mexico with some of our statistics that really we could make those private equity investments?
Interesting point.
I call this session, it looks like it's, you know, it's just started, but I'm beginning to think this is going to be the incredible shrinking budget. Because with every passing day, oil keeps dropping. I mean, just a month ago, the idea of $30 a barrel oil was kind of out there. Now people are talking about $20 a barrel oil. And, you know, as we all know, by a lot of accounts, New Mexico's total general fund, entire economy is about 31% dependent upon the resources, the severance taxes that are brought in by the oil and gas industry. And regardless of where you stand on the political perspective, if the new money, which originally I think was, they expected about $262 million in new money just a few months ago. Now they're quickly tracking that back. And at this rate, regardless where you are in the political perspective, if you're right of center and you want to have more, want to get tougher on crime, that costs money. If you're left of center, if you want to spend money on early childhood development, that sort of stuff, giving more money to teachers, and also the governor has more money for the teachers as well. But regardless where you are, if there's no money, there's no money. And we have to have a balanced budget because we're a state, we're not the federal government.
Interesting, Stephen Spitz, taxes did come up in the speech. In fact, she said we've gone from a D to a B, that we're nearing an A. This is about jobs and economic development. What was your reaction to that? Do you remember? I'm sure you remember that particular point.
I do remember that point.
Yeah.
You know, it's not the governor's fault that we went into recession in 2010,
Fair enough.
right? Because you know, and that the federal sequester happened, and that caused less federal money to flow in. But you know, the basic idea is when you're in a hole, stop digging, and then the tax cuts came. And so now our budget has been impaired by all these tax cuts. And when the one company you can identify as having been brought in by these hundreds of millions of dollars of tax cuts is a business that you, quote, pray will grow into a small business with 300 employees, I mean, it's just not working. And to Rob's point, I mean, the money's simply not going to be there. At least, you know, you have to consider that we're talking about next July, this coming July to the next July. So we're really guessing, you know, way far ahead. We don't know what's going to happen to oil, but gross receipts taxes, receipts are also down. So it looks like a very slim budget, and there's simply, it doesn't look like we're going to be able to do almost anything, and some of that's the governor's fault. I mean, we closed down our lobbying offices that we had under Governor Richardson to try to get more federal money. We haven't spent everything that the state auditor points to. That's supposedly another $1 billion. Some of that's been contested, but some of it hasn't. We have retention funds that are 10, 12%. So you're taking $600 million out of the economy and you're not putting it back in. That's the governor's fault. So some of the economic problems that we have lay at the, you know, are the governor's responsibility. She basically ignored those in the speech.
Interesting point there. Quick change of subject. We've got just about a minute and a half left on this one. Behavioral health issues kind of came and went in the speech, about a paragraph and a half, but she did say, quote, over the last 2 years, we've seen an 84% increase in behavioral health services provided in our state to the highest level in state history, and under my budget, we'll use another additional behavioral health dollars for new crises, triage centers, mobile crisis response teams, and community behavioral health clinics. Now, the point is, Antoinette Cedillo-Lopez, we've seen an 84% increase in behavioral health services provided in our state. Your reaction to that?
I was very curious, and I could not find where she got that number, and it's not visible. At least I'm not seeing it in the community, in the worlds I live in. I just don't see that. How is it working? I don't know. I thought that point was interesting. I appreciated the sentiment, but it's not visible, and it's not in the community I serve. I don't see it.
Right. Lieutenant Governor, touch on that if you would.
Well,
30 seconds.
I think what Antoinette said, it's not really visible, and the number can't really be tracked down. And frankly, she expanded Medicaid, which allowed a lot more people to get insurance through the New Mexico Health Exchange, which is really important. So maybe providers are billing for behavioral health services because Medicaid was expanded and because of the Affordable Care Act, frankly, getting more and more people insured. But the real truth is that if you're really doing real mental health, it's hard for me to believe that after the destruction of the rural mental health centers through the change of vendors, that, I mean, you hear anecdotal stories from day to day about people who can't get services.
We hear them here all the time.
So I would question that.
Absolutely. We're going to take a quick pause. We'll talk more about the legislature in a few minutes. Now, up next, we hear why some people are proposing major changes in New Mexico's capital outlay process.